reset my password on HUD Home Store.
Okay. All right. The recording started. You guys are ready to go.
Yep.
I'm going to log off. I'll probably log back on in a little bit and see how you guys are doing. And then you guys can take it from here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Laura. Appreciate
Sure.
your help. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I hope. If you cannot, if you're having any problems, please put your notes in the chat box if you would, and we will interact with you the best we can by chat. If we need to talk to you personally, we'll unmute you and we can actually communicate with you. Normally we produce these things live and we bring pizza. So sorry about this new COVID-19 approach, but Zoom is still an excellent way to communicate, and it's a great alternate to meeting with you guys live. My name is Mike Potier. My company is Boardwalk Properties. I've been licensed in real estate since 1972, and I've been marketing REO since 1979. I will be sharing this presentation with two other local listing brokers, Caroline Gim with Expert Real Estate and David Jervis with Coldwell Banker. About 10 years ago, we were blessed to land the HUD account from BLB Resources. They represent HUD throughout the entire state of California. If you would please silence your phones. I've turned down my phone here at the office, turned my cell phone off. If you have any questions, please enter them in the chat box and we will try to answer them as we go along. We'll probably have enough time to answer questions live. If there's any unanswered questions at the end, we'll unmute you and get your questions answered. But right now, let's go ahead and begin. This is an overview. Hopefully you guys can see that screen. If you can't, please let us know. We're going to talk today about who can buy and sell HUD homes, some of the benefits of buying HUD homes, your NAID and broker registration, how to bid and submit offers. And you guys are going to love this portion. It's really, really easy. We're now on e-signatures. It's just a phenomenal, efficient system. And advertising HUD homes. We're going to talk about that as well. So what is a HUD home? This is an FHA insured mortgage that went into default. The lender does the foreclosing, okay? It's not HUD. These are truly not REO because of this step. The lender actually does the acquisition. They do the foreclosing process. Then they submit their FHA insurance claim to HUD. Once that process is complete, they convey ownership to HUD. HUD then sells their properties through their local asset manager in the state of California. We have only one, and that is BLB Resources. HUD home, the arena that these take place in is really 1 to 4. Single family residences, townhomes, condos, anything up to 4 units. Who can buy a HUD home? Virtually anybody. Individuals, investors, HUD approved nonprofits or government entities. And HUD doesn't care whether you get a loan or pay cash. So I know a lot of you are used to submitting offers by cash and showing cash because you want to influence the seller, and then you'll change it to hard money or some other type of financing. Please don't do that step. It doesn't matter to HUD. It really truly does not matter. They only care about the highest net cash in their pocket. If you are going to get financing, we ask for a pre-qual letter from your lender or proof of cash if you're going to use all cash. And some really good news is there is a priority bidding period for owner occupants. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Some of the benefits of buying HUD homes. HUD is pre-agreed to pay up to 3% of your buyer's closing costs for owner occupants. You've got to ask for it. And in David's portion, he's actually going to be pulling up a contract and we'll show you how to do that. Another benefit, if it's a condo or a townhome, project approval is not required. Now, this is only on HUD homes. A lot of these complexes around our area were FHA approved at one time, and because of various situations, maybe litigation in the complex, maybe the complex began to see an increase in tenant occupancy ratio, which caused the complex to fall outside of the boundaries. Or maybe the HOA dues are delinquent in such a degree that it prohibits the complex from being FHA approved. None of those situations are relevant. If we're offering a condo, a HUD home, in a condo or a townhome, project approval is not required. It's irrelevant. Since HUD owns the unit, they can certainly decide to waive that requirement, which they do. You guys are probably getting information that a lot of lenders are not going to be aware of. So we're grateful that you're here and you're learning this, because we like to not just put deals into escrow, but we like to close them. The IE finance type, you'll see a lot of that. It's a very prevalent finance type for HUD homes. It's insured with escrow holdback. And as you know, HUD sells these properties strictly as is. They don't do any repair items. And even if it's a minor item, could be broken window, could be water heater strapping, could be something, a simple fix, HUD will not go on the property and fix that, repair that item. The IE is a finance type. It's a workaround to satisfy the lender on health and safety issues that are required by the lender, but it allows the borrower to borrow up to $10,000, have that work done, that repair work done after close of escrow, and any unused portion of the money is used to reduce the principal balance, okay? It's a wonderful workaround. We love it. As I said, there is an owner-occupant priority bidding period. We'll talk to you more about the details of that shortly. Another benefit is there's real low earnest money deposits on any purchase price of $250,001 or greater, which is virtually everything in our market. The EMD is only $2,000. In fact, if you try to impress HUD by bringing us a check for 20 grand, 30 grand, is difficult as this may seem, we're going to have to send you back to the bank and swap that off for $2,000. You have to remember who we're dealing with here. This is the US government. They're real easy to work with as long as we give them exactly what they want, exactly the way they want it. Anything outside of that box kind of stops the whole process. So only $2,000. We'll talk more about EMDs in a little while. There's a Good Neighbor Next Door program, which we'll get into some of the details of that shortly. All homes are listed at HUDHomestore.com, and in David's portion of the presentation, he'll actually take you on the website and walk you through it. There's a real quick response time for bids, you guys. You will not be waiting for the client, the seller, to make up their mind on what offer to accept. Once you hit a bid deadline, your buyer will know within 24 hours whether they were the successful bidder or not. It's really an efficient system. And none of us as local listing brokers have a clue on the quality or quantity of bids. We get asked that all the time. Well, how many offers have you guys seen on this property? I'm serious, we have no idea. FHA 203K is an excellent owner-occ rehab loan option. And I don't know if you guys have ever used this loan type. When it first came out, I tried it myself. And I know one of the biggest deterrents for agents trying this program is they just fear it. They just lack understanding about it. But I wanted to find out what it took to actually get one of these loans closed. And I pushed it all I could. I was able to close escrow in 21 days. So I know if you push these deals, you can actually get them closed very, very quickly. We love them as local listing brokers because we close escrows with them. They have a phenomenal ability to handle some of the problems that you'll normally see when you submit bids. In this environment where we lack inventory, overbidding above list price is common. You guys know that. And if you end up with an appraisal issue, your buyer is going to have to come in with the cash for the difference, or the seller drops the price in normal situations, or you meet somewhere in the middle. Well, it doesn't happen that way on HUD homes. Unfortunately, HUD will not drop that price to match your appraisal. You only have the option, well, you have two options. You can bring in the difference in cash, your buyer can, or you can cancel. You can obviously rebid if you want, submit another bid once it comes back up on the market. But now you're going to be competing with other bidders. So the FHA 203K, since your appraisal is going to be done based on future value, the odds are much better that the appraisal is going to come in high enough that you won't have that problem. So we love it. We close it. We're going to talk more about FHA 203K in just a little bit. As I said earlier, it doesn't matter to HUD how you buy these properties, how your buyer buys these properties, whether it's all cash, hard money, conventional, FHA, VA, it does not matter to HUD. But if you use FHA financing, they give you a couple of bonuses. They will automatically do termite inspection, and they'll pay for treatment. Active infestation will be paid for by HUD. And any homes built before 1978, they'll automatically do a lead-based paint inspection and pay for remediation up to $4,000. And that does not affect your buyer's net at all. These are truly freebies. As I said earlier, these are sealed bids. There's complete bid transparency. As local listing brokers, we don't have any idea of the quality or quantity of any of the bids submitted. We find out who the successful bidder was the same time your buyer finds out that they've won the bid, okay? You never have to worry about an unscrupulous listing broker using your offer to snake you or try to get one of their buyers to come in and outbid you. It's not going to happen in this system. The integrity of the system is impeccable. Okay, who can sell a HUD home? Any licensed real estate broker registered with HUD or an agent employed by a HUD registered broker. A NAID will be required. Most of you guys, your offices, your managers, your brokers already have NAIDs, and David's going to show you how you can actually check that and how you actually register under your broker's NAID. So that's all going to be done at HUDHomestore.com, and David will show you that once he gets the screen up and running. The HUD registered broker or agent must submit a bid on behalf of an owner, occupant, investor, or good neighbor next door buyer. Buyers cannot go online themselves and submit bids. They need a licensed agent. So that's the good news. The exception to that is HUD registered or HUD approved nonprofits and government entities can submit bids on certain properties without using a broker or an agent. Okay, this is the site, and David's going to show you how you can actually upload the correct site onto your phone, your cell phone. So don't go searching for it yet. You'll end up with difficulty. Just wait till David's portion of the presentation, and he'll get you set up properly so you've got the correct app on your phone, okay? So they go on HUDHomestore.com first. I don't know, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, David tells me. I don't get up that early. But they're also shown in the MLS, but we don't get notification of the listing until later in the day. But we get in the habit early of checking HUDHomestore.com to see if there's any new listings that are going to be hitting. Okay, since owner occupants have a priority bidding period, we have to define, HUD has to define who is an owner occupant, and that's what we're going to do here. It's a buyer who's purchasing a property as their primary residence, and they've agreed to live there for at least 12 months after close of escrow, and have not purchased a HUD home as an owner occupant in the past 24 months. In HUD's definition, that equals owner occupancy, okay? Got to make sure your buyer meets that criteria. It's very important. I'll show you why. It's on this screen here with that big red caution sign. And the guy, I want you guys to remember that guy in the lower right-hand corner of your screen with the striped suit and the ball and chain around his ankle, okay? Don't forget that, please. It's just not worth it. This caution is there for a reason. It says falsifying information regarding owner-occupant status is considered a felony. It's punishable by a fine not to exceed $250,000 and or a prison sentence of not more than 2 years. It's a biggie, and all of us can be investigated. Buyers, local listing brokers, selling brokers, all of us can be investigated by HUD. It's just not worth it, you guys. Just do good, clean business. I know you will. It's compounded. The difficulty gets compounded today. Believe it or not, there's actually investors out there who know these rules, and some of them will actually look you in the eye, knowing that they're in an owner-occupant bidding environment, bidding time, knowing that they have to lie if they want a chance at buying the property. They'll actually look you in the eye and tell you they're going to move into it. If it doesn't make sense to you, please don't let it happen. Okay, we're going to go through the process right now. The field service manager inspects the property and ensures it's ready to list. Now, these are not cleaned up. All the FSM does is go out and smooth out the best they can within their guidelines, the rough spots. They will mark hazardous areas. They will do board up. They just don't want anybody getting hurt on these properties, okay? So these are not fixed up, not repaired properties by any stretch of the imagination, but once they finish their portion, they ensure it's ready to list. At that time, BLB Resources then orders an inspection, and as is FHA appraisal, they also order BPOs, and they do some more evaluation from other valuation methods. Besides, they've got at least 3, usually more, values that they look at before they list these properties. Yeah. It used to be the old days, if some of you may even remember Golden Feather, they used to use the FHA appraisal as list price. Not so anymore. That FHA appraisal is ordered strictly by HUD for the purpose of marketing price, and it becomes the property of HUD. It's not transferred to the borrower, okay? If your new buyer uses FHA financing, they will get a new FHA appraisal, okay? Then they notify us and we list the property in the MLS. So you guys show the property. You then make sure you're registered under your broker's NAID and submit the bid electronically. That process takes all of about 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes starting out. You can probably end up getting these done in under 2 minutes. It's really a quick, efficient system. Once we hit the bid deadline, BLB Resources reviews the bids for acceptability, and the winning bidder is notified within 24 hours. It's a great system. This is a moneymaker, you guys. I hate to talk about easy money in real estate because there's really no such thing. But this is a moneymaker. And you guys are licensed in the entire state of California. I just want you to really look at this carefully and think about all the ways you can begin making money anywhere in the state of California. It's really, really cool. This is the new system. We used to have to run contracts, get contracts signed and run them down to Irvine within 2 days. It's simple now. It's all done by e-signature, and I don't want you to have to worry about the process right now. We'll walk you through once you're a winning bidder. Just know that it's really, really all done by DocuSign. It's an easy process. We love it. The EMD requirements, and Caroline will talk a little bit more about this. I mentioned it a little bit, but there's really only one or two parties that EMD is made payable to. Should be payable to escrow or your buyer's name. Just escrow by itself is fine, but if you're going to have your buyer's name on there, so either escrow or your buyer can negotiate that if it's turned back, put escrow, whatever the name of your escrow is, and your buyer's name. But just escrow is fine right now. So you'll need that done, and Caroline will walk you through the types, the form of that deposit in just a little while. But virtually, as you can see below, virtually every price in our market will be $250,000, $1 or greater, which means your EMD will be $2,000, okay? And from once your transaction, once your sale is accepted by the seller, once we have a contract, it's very similar to what you're used to, okay? You'll do a physical inspection. We want you to know, David will show you how to access the limited inspections that have been done on these properties. They are limited, and I underline that. Your buyer really needs to do a complete physical inspection. Just know that regardless of what they find on the property, HUD is selling these properties as is. So even if it's a deal killer, your option is to cancel. You'll get your deposit back. Investors will not, but owner occupants, they're real good about returning the deposit. Once your loan is approved, escrow title gets transferred. One of the unique things about HUD Homes is that the buyer is going to have to rekey the property after close of escrow. These are master keyed properties. We do not give out keys to these properties at all, just too much risk. And once we close escrow, we will go ahead and remove the signage and lock boxes. That's kind of weird. They have a real firm time frame. You can't negotiate greater than these criterias here. They want escrows to close within 30, 45, or 60 days, depending on the buyer type or the property type. And we'll talk more about the property type in just a little bit, but they grant 30 days only for investors, regardless of finance type. 30 days for cash or hard money, regardless of purchaser type. 45 days for owner occupants on 203B or 203B repair escrow or conventional financing. And 60 days for owner ocs using 203K financing. So it doesn't take too long to realize, geez, since I know I can change my financing type, if I can go ask for 203K, I can always change the financing type and shorten that if I want. So that, you might want to give that some thought. There's some wisdom there. If your transaction does not close within these timeframes, your property is subject to cancellation. HUD is real clear. They want extensions submitted within 5 days, of close of escrow. And there's a fee for that. It will be rebated for any unused portion. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. These are real easy to show you guys. All these properties are vacant. They all have super lock boxes on them. If you ever find a key missing from the lockbox, call us, the local listing broker. We will get a key run out to you right away. We don't want anything to delay your showing. The old days, the old golden feather days, we used to give HUD keys to our buyers and investors, and they could go into these properties on their own. We don't do that anymore. You must be present with your buyer. Okay, I mentioned some financing types a little earlier. There's 4 financing types that I want to run through. This is real important. The first 2 are more owner-occupant driven. The insurable, which are rare, they qualify for FHA 203B financing with no minimum repair requirements, none whatsoever. So they're, in the appraiser's eyes, these are financeable for FHA 203B as is. Nothing needs to be done. And they're rare. We don't usually see those, but they do come across occasionally. Usually we'll see the IE, the insurable with escrow holdback. They qualify for 203B, but they have MPR repairs of $11,000 or less. There's $10,000 in repairs plus a 10% overage. So as I explained earlier, it's the buyer's responsibility to get those repairs done after close of escrow. The repairman, the workman will get paid, and any unused portion of that will be used to reduce the principal balance, okay? These other 2 financing methods are more investor driven. The previous 2 have a longer owner-occupant period, 15 days, because they're more owner-occ type properties. These 2 types are more investor driven, and they have a shorter exclusive period, only 5 days. There's the UI, uninsurable. HUD says, sorry, we're not going to go there. We're not going to get involved in making a loan on this property. This is where we'll see burnouts. We'll see mold infested properties. We'll see structurally damaged properties. This is where it could be even be age. When you get around 100 years old, HUD usually says, we're done. We're not going to go there. They'll classify it as UI, uninsurable. The last type is the UK. They would normally be uninsurable, but HUD says, you know what, if you guys fix this property up, we'll go there. We'll do a 203K loan on that property, okay? And that leads us into the 203K segment. It's a great program. It enables the homeowner to finance the purchase of the property and the cost of rehab through a single mortgage, okay? So the buyer has the opportunity to, since this is going to be like it's all cash to the seller, that's how it looks to the seller. They're not going to get involved with doing anything, including termite or lead-based paint. Things you normally would have to do on FHA. 203K, none of that work gets done prior to close of escrow. The purpose is to fill a need for the home buyer to repair or modernize the home without the relatively high interest rates, short repayment terms, and or balloon payments. So the 203K insured loans save borrowers time and money. We love the program. Now there's two types. There's the traditional for above 35,000 and for structural and other repair items. And there's the streamline for under $35,000 that do not get involved with structural or room additions. So both programs require repairs to begin within 30 days after close of escrow and be completed within 6 months. There is just a ton of things that you can do with this 203K. Here's a list. So you can structurally alter the do reconstruction, modernization, eliminate the obvious health and safety standards, change and improve the appearance, eliminate obsolescence. You can replace plumbing, well, septic system, add a roof, gutters, downspouts, you know, do all the cosmetic stuff you want, landscaping, site improvements, disabled accessibility, energy conservation, and more. It's just wonderfully flexible. I want you guys to think a little bit about this. You can add square footage if the lot is situated correctly, all right? So everybody wants a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Nobody wants the 1 or 2 bedrooms, and that's where it may be providing some opportunity for you to look at. If the property is located such on the lot that you can add bedrooms, bathrooms, family room, whatever, don't write that 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom off. Look at it through the eyes of, geez, how could I make that property into the kind of property, the type of property that my buyer would like, okay? So don't eliminate properties just because they don't seem to have the square footage or the characteristics that your buyer wants. You can even add, if the property is zoned correctly, units, up to 4 units. The caveat is that there must be some connectivity, either the walls connected or even an archway connects the units. It gives you incredible flexibility. Okay, do you need a pre-approval letter to submit a bid? Yes, please. If it's a cash sale, you will need verification of cash on hand. All bids are submitted at HUDHomestore.com, and we'll take you there shortly and show you actually how to do that. Okay, the listing period changes. And David will show you how you can actually see this on the website when you're looking at a property. But basically, as I said earlier, the exclusive listing period for the IN and the IE is a little bit longer since it's a better quality product and more owner-occupant driven. It's a 15-day exclusive listing period. The first bid deadline is 10 days after the property goes on the market. So day 11, HUD will review bids. And if a deal is accepted, we go under contract, we're in escrow. If it's not, it goes back on the market for 5 more days, okay? Once that 15-day owner exclusive listing period has expired, it will roll over to extended. When you see extended, that means anybody can submit a bid, owner-occs or investors. In the exclusive period, only owner-occupants can submit bids. So this is really your safe window to not have to deal with all those flippers that are out there paying all cash. The UI bid review is a little bit shorter. We have 5 days only for exclusive, and then bids are reviewed day 6. If there's not an acceptable bid, it becomes extended, and then all bidders can submit bids. There are situations where bid review may occur when there's a change between exclusive and extended over the weekend. And this screen will explain how those are dealt with. If Monday is a holiday, bids received Friday and Saturday and Sunday will be reviewed on Tuesday. If Friday is a holiday, all bids received on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday will be reviewed on Monday. And likewise, if a holiday falls midweek, the bids received on the day prior to the holiday and on the holiday will be reviewed on the following business day. I know that's really hard for you. You guys are not going to remember that any more than I would. But the key is to look on the screen. David will show you the bid deadline when we actually pull up a property. Okay, it's very simple. More notes on bid deadlines. Okay, bids again are accepted based on HUD's guidelines, which include highest net. Highest net is really the criteria for any bid that's accepted by HUD. An owner occupant may bid on more than one property. However, BLB Resources will award only one acceptable bid that's in the HUD's best interest, okay? The Lottery and the Good Neighbor Next Door program. I mentioned this earlier. Certain properties are noted in the system as being in a lottery area and are listed in the lottery program. Properties that are in designated revitalization areas are assigned to a lottery program. Note that only single unit residences in revitalized areas go into the lottery program. 2 to 4 units do not go into the lottery program. These properties are only available for Good Neighbor Next Door participants, HUD-approved nonprofits, and government entities, okay? This is a great program. They're listed and sold exclusively through HUDHomestore.com. They're not found on the MLS. All offers submitted are full price. HUD does not pay closing costs or commissions for these sales. So you're going to have to get paid, have a side agreement. You can actually run this through escrow, but get your buyer to agree to pay you 3%, what you'd normally get paid, on the full value of the property is what I would recommend, okay? If you're going to be able to save your buyer 50%, if they're the successful bidder, they will not have a problem paying you a 3% commission. So how this works is that designated properties in revitalization areas are available at a 50% discount for officers, teachers, EMTs, and firefighters. The properties must be located in the area or district where the GNND participant works or services, with the exception of officers, okay? Policemen, they understand it may be a little bit risky to them to be working where they live. So they have to work in a reasonable distance from the property. If you're not sure, HUD will make that determination. We can always call HUD in Santa Ana and they can look at it on a case-by-case basis. But all the others should work in the area where the property is located. How this works is the buyer must meet the HUD's eligibility requirements that we just talked about. The buyer signs a second mortgage. It's a silent second that sits there on the shelf, unused, no payments, no interest, until the buyer fulfills their 3-year occupancy requirement. Then it disappears, it's gone. If they move out before that, that's prorated, okay? But that's the rules. The rules are you've got to stay there in the property, live there for 3 years, and the second disappears. The additional criteria is that neither the buyer nor his spouse may have owned any residential property during the year prior to the date of submitting a bid. That's important. And neither the buyer nor his spouse may have ever purchased another HUD home under the GNND program. This is a once in a lifetime hit. Once you hit this, it's like hitting the lotto, and they only allow you to do it one time, you guys. Okay, closing costs. It's a little different on HUD homes because virtually HUD doesn't pay anything. They have a pre-agreed to pay up to 3% for the buyer's closing costs. For owner occupants, they'll pay 6%, 3% to the selling broker, 3% to the local listing broker, and that's it. HUD doesn't pay almost anything else. This is just a few of the items that HUD pays, that's it. So the fees, the cost of all the fees will be on the buyer. So be careful, make sure you've got your buyer covered. They may need to take advantage of that offer for HUD to pay up to 3% of their costs. Okay, only the winning bidder is notified. They'll be notified the same time we are notified. And at this point in time, I'm going to see if I can share the screen so that Caroline can jump on. Caroline?
Okay, can you see my screen now?
I see the mortgagee letter.
Okay, I think this is it. I'm going to make it big. I don't know how to do the slideshow part of it. I think this is it. Am I starting the slideshow over?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that. Okay, hold on.
You can fast forward. Might be the easiest way.
Okay, let me move this over here then. Now, out of curiosity, Mike, you're the only one that's unmuted. Can you see two screens? Like one is the big slide and a smaller slide on the side, or do I only see the smaller one?
I only see, I see.
We can
the
both
big
see,
screen
we can
and
see
small
both
one.
of them. There's a split screen,
You
Caroline.
see both of them. So you see what I see. Okay.
Right.
I don't know how to get rid of that. Sorry.
Go back to your display settings to your taskbar.
That it?
There we go. Now you're up. Mortgagee letter.
Okay. All right. And I don't see you guys. I don't see any chat. So if anything comes up, hopefully David or Mike will be able to respond to the chat. So hello, everybody. Used to be that HUD in the past used to do an appraisal before listing, and they still do. Before they put the property on the market, they will have the local listing broker do an interior BPO. They'll also hire an appraiser to go out and do an FHA appraisal. And that's only for the benefit of HUD. In fact, we don't see that appraisal at all. We don't know what the value is, but the lender, I'm sorry, the asset manager does. And then the asset manager will also see any possible minimum property requirements that might be called out by the lender. And so anything that they see gets identified on the HUD Home Store website. So you as the buyer's agent will know what the appraiser had pointed out as, hey, these are concerns that might affect financing. You know, and if you think that it's going to be less than $10,000, then you can incorporate that into a regular FHA loan, which is, you know, really easy with a repair holdback so that your buyer can still buy the property as is. In the past, they used to have that appraisal readily available for the buyer to use for free. Problem was, sometimes the buyers would want to submit an offer higher than the asking price, but they would be stuck. They'd be forced to use whatever the appraisal value was on HUD's appraisal. So no longer is that available to the buyer, for better or worse, and in most cases it's going to be for better. But HUD does do an appraisal prior to list. That's not necessarily the list price. You know, like I said, the local listing broker also does a BPO. They might get a third-party opinion as well, and then, you know, they come up with an appropriate list price, and then after we go under contract, the buyer pays for a new appraisal. Whether it's an FHA loan or a conventional loan, the buyer pays for a new appraisal. It's no longer available to get HUD's copy. So a couple things on commission, you know, with the exception of a good neighbor next door property or a lottery property where there is no commission paid because the buyer is getting a significant discount on the property, HUD will pay 3% to the listing agent and up to 3% for the buyer's agent. Just be aware that, you know, you can go down, and we'll explain more why later, but the commission offered to the buyer's agent is going to be up to 3%. A couple of things, you know, you can't do these funny things where you send commission instructions to the escrow company saying, hey, I want you to disperse it this way, just send me my check directly and then the rest to the broker. For HUD, they say, we'll only do one commission disbursement for each brokerage, and it's going to be exactly the way it shows up on the contract. I don't know why, but that's just something that they've always done. If the buyer is also the agent representing themselves, then they're not going to be paid a commission. That started at the end of 2016. And if you're really even affiliated with the buyer, if you try to say, well, I'm not the buyer, but ABC Corporation is. If you're tied to ABC Corporation, it's considered the same thing. So, you just don't ever want to get caught trying to be sneaky with the government. That's kind of a big deal. As Mike had mentioned, any whiff of fraud, and HUD takes it very seriously. So it's not worth losing your license, it's not worth paying a fine, and it's not worth jail time. If you're going to buy a HUD home as an investor, fine. Just do it and then forego the commission. I think we'd be willing to do that if the deal is good enough. So all of the offers are going to be submitted for HUD properties online. The website that HUD uses is HUDHomestore.com, and that's on your screen. HUDHOMESTORE, HUDHomestore.com. That's where you're going to go as the agent to check the availability of a property, because once your buyer is ready to submit an offer, your offer gets submitted on that website as well. So if you go to the website and it's not there, well, then the property is not available. On the website, it's going to let you know the next time HUD is going to be reviewing property or offers for this property is, for example, it might say today is Tuesday. So it might say, hey, we're going to be reviewing offers that are submitted all the way through Tuesday, at 10 o'clock California time, PM. They'll all be reviewed the next morning on Wednesday. If that bid period is not over yet, then you want to cancel your client's bid, they change their mind, whatever, you just go back to HUDHomestore.com, log into your account. You can pull up all of the offers that you have submitted. So find the one that you submitted for that client, and if you want to make a change, if you want to modify the bid, you can do that as well. You pull it up. Maybe they offered 360 and now they want to offer 365. You can make a change. Or they submit an offer at 360 and, gosh, they're driving home and they get a notice that they're being laid off at work, or, something's happened and they can't move to that home anymore. They call you, they say, hey, you know what, we changed our mind. Log on to HUDHomestore.com, find that bid, and you can actually withdraw it altogether. Once you have your offer accepted, however, everything on HUD Home Store gets frozen. So that property is no longer accessible on the website. You cannot find it. So let's assume that your offer is accepted. We go under contract, we're in escrow, and the buyer is doing their inspection or their appraisal. And something comes up and they decide, hey, this is not the home for us. If that is the case, there's a different website you go to, and that's www.blbresources.com. And on that website, find all of the forms for the state of California. And one of the forms that you're going to need is a cancellation form. Fill out that form, make it as complete as possible. If you have any supporting documentation, be sure to attach it to that cancellation form, because that form is also going to be your request for the buyer to get their earnest money deposit back. HUD is very generous with owner-occupants. So if your buyer has a $2,000 earnest money deposit on file and they do a home inspection, and let's say there's maybe some plumbing leaks that are discovered, HUD is very adamant. We only sell these properties as is, so we're not going to make the repairs. And the buyer thinks about it and maybe they price it out, it's too much for them. You know what, based on this, the house needs more work than we are prepared for. Go ahead and cancel. On the cancellation form, the reason for cancellation will be, after doing a home inspection, buyer has found that there are too many repairs needed. Great. Supporting documentation will be a copy of that home inspection report showing that, hey, there's some plumbing leaks there. And then you can ask on that form, buyer requests a refund of their earnest money deposit. HUD is going to be, using their discretion, but as I said, they're pretty generous with owner-occupant buyers. If it's a reasonable reason, most likely it's going to be probably a lender issue as well. Maybe the lender won't finance that property, or the buyer's financing changes and they can't get that loan anymore. Same thing, submit the cancellation form, and the supporting documentation will be a letter from your lender saying, hey, buyer's no longer qualified, and then the buyer can request their earnest money deposit back. If you have an investor though, if your investor is either this is a second home for them, even if they're buying this home for their kids to live in, they're considered an investor. If their buyer's an investor, HUD is generally going to retain the buyer's earnest money deposit because they do make investors wait a little bit longer to submit an offer, and they treat investors as a more sophisticated buyer. With an owner-occupant, they think, okay, this person's going to be living there themselves. They're not out there wheeling and dealing on a regular basis. So they're a little bit, kinder. With an investor, generally, I would prep your buyer for you're probably going to lose your earnest money deposit. However, the good thing is on a HUD property, they're not very high. The earnest money deposit is generally never going to be more than $2,000, whether you have a cash buyer or a finance buyer. Backup bids. When you submit your offer online, and David will show you exactly what it looks like, there is an option that says, if the buyer's offer is not accepted, would you like us to hold this as a backup? And for most buyers, there's no reason why you would say no, because no harm, no foul. If the property comes back on the market, you might get a notification, hey, do you want this property? You can always say no. But as of now, HUD is actually not going back to the backup bidders one by one the way they used to. They used to call every single backup buyer. There might be 50 or 60, and they would reach out to everyone individually. It took too long, and by then a lot of buyers had moved on. So now what they do is they generally will send out an email blast to all of the unsuccessful buyers if the winning bidder backs out for any reason. Hey, congratulations, or hey, good news. 123 Main Street is coming back on the market. That doesn't mean that no one else will know about it, because the listing agents, we do reactivate it on the MLS, but you generally will know before anyone else. And I would say if it's any day Monday through Thursday, definitely get online and submit a new offer right away, because I see that window close the very next morning. Okay, so if you get that notice, it's probably because you had submitted an offer originally and you said, please hold our offer as a backup in case. And I think if there are just a couple of backup buyers, they have been known to give them calls directly, but for the most part, they're not holding the property from coming back on the market after a buyer falls through. They'll just put it back on the market and let all of the backup buyers know. How is a HUD home financed? As Mike had mentioned, there are different types of FHA financing codes that you'll see on HUD Home Store. If you see the IE, it means, hey, this house is good to go as is. It's insurable. I'm sorry, IN, which is insurable. It's good to go as is. The house may not be perfect. It may not be pretty, but just by rules of whether or not something is financeable, yes, it is. If you see IE next to the FHA letters, then you're going to see that that's insurable with an escrow holdback. There are some repairs that are needed. HUD is not going to make the repairs, but HUD estimates that the repairs should be $10,000 or less. There's no bid out there, but that's just the estimate. And so if that's the case, then the buyer can add up to $11,000 to their existing loan amount to incorporate those repairs into the financing. And then after close of escrow, the buyer makes the repairs, and then they call their lender and they say, hey, I know you guys are holding back, let's say $5,000, $6,000, $11,000. I made those repairs that you needed me to make. We replaced the water heater, we patched the roof, we fixed the drywall. Great. The lender's holding that money. They're going to send someone out to go take a look at the work, and they're going to ask the buyer for copies of their paid receipts, their invoices. And whatever the buyer had used towards that, that will get funded from what they're holding back to the buyer. So if the lender is holding back $11,000 and the buyer, let's say they got a good deal, or they've got friends and family that helps them out, and they only spent $7,000 to make all the repairs, and that's all they have the receipts for, that's fine. Then their lender will release the $7,000 to them and reduce the principal balance on their loan by the other $4,000. Buyer's never going to get more money than what they actually spent out of pocket. At the same time, let's say if the lender is holding back $11,000 and it turns out the work cost $15,000, or the buyer wanted to do something fancier, instead of patching the roof, they replaced the roof. Well, HUD's only holding, or the lender's only holding so much. So if the lender's holding $11,000, then that's exactly what they can release back to them. And then the buyer is paying the rest out of pocket and not financing that. You see an IU, then it's going to be an uninsurable property. If you see a UK, it's going to be insurable with a 203K financing. And then same, I mean, the buyer is free to use conventional financing or cash or hard money. Any of those is acceptable to HUD. As far as HUD is concerned, the house needs to be financeable as is. That's it. So if your conventional lender has a rehab loan, fine. If your conventional lender will allow for a small escrow holdback, fine. The key is the property has to be financed in its current as-is condition, or they pay cash. Can you get a copy of the appraisal? No. As we mentioned before, that's no longer available to the buyer. That's actually, in my opinion, better for the buyer because you're not tied to the value that that FHA appraiser had put on the house originally. HUD is very strict with their as-is policy. You know, they're not making any representations or warranties concerning the condition, and they're not going to make any repairs. So whether your buyer is an owner-occupant or an investor, they are highly, highly, highly encouraged to do any inspections that they want to the property and to, you know, cancel if it's not up to what the buyer wants. But HUD is not going to be responsible for making any repairs. If there's damage done to the home while we're under contract, HUD will address them, but they're not going to make improvements and they're probably not going to replace things that get stolen. The most common example is if the AC condenser is stolen, HUD might send you, as a buyer's agent, an email saying, hey, buyer, if they still want to buy the house, we'll give them, you know, like a $500 credit for the missing AC condenser. And your buyer will say, I can't buy an AC condenser for $500. Then it's going to be up to the buyer. They can cancel, get their earnest money deposit back, and either, you know, walk on to another property, or they can submit another offer on this same property at a price that they feel is fair, knowing that all the backup buyers now know that this house is back on the market. Are they willing to compete again? Or, you know, the buyers may say 500, yeah, that's fine. We were going to replace it anyway. But as I mentioned, you know, HUD is going to say as is, as is. They're not going to replace a missing AC condenser. Buyer's home inspection. You know, when we take over these properties, all of the utilities are shut off. So buyers given 15 days to do their inspections. That is going to include the time it takes to get the utilities turned on in the buyer's name. That might take a week, that might take 2 weeks. So as soon as you can, get those utilities turned on. And if there's a delay, let HUD know in advance, let BLB Resources know in advance. But generally, the buyer has 15 days from the fully executed contract date. That's when the buyer signs and then the seller has signed and returned the contract to do the home inspection. And then when they turn on, when they turn on the utilities, they're going to have to turn on in their name and only for a 72-hour window. The buyers have to turn them back off because as far as HUD is concerned, there's no good with having property that's sitting vacant and utilities on, okay? And the 15-day inspection period, although, you know, HUD might be willing to extend it if the buyer is really moving diligently and let's say there's a delay in turning on the water services, you know, keep the lines of communication open. Don't wait until day 15 to decide to let everybody know, oh, we just decided to do an inspection. Can we get another 15 days? Probably not. You know, just like with any other home, until the buyer actually owns the property, they're not allowed to touch it. They're not allowed to make improvements, repairs, landscape modifications. They certainly can't live in the house. They can't occupy the house or change the locks. They're not allowed to store personal property on the premises. I mean, it's weird, but it happens. I think for whatever reason, people think, well, the house is empty. What does it matter? It matters. You know, if they're not the owners of the property making home improvements, it could go awry. You know, what if there's more damage done than good with these repairs? Or what if the buyer puts in brand new flooring and then their loan falls through? They don't get to go back in the house and tear the flooring out. So, you know, just better safe than sorry. Until the buyer is the actual owner, they should not be given a set of keys. They should not be given access to the property to do any of these things. You as the buyer's agent need to be there to supervise every time your buyer or their inspectors or their appraisers or their contractors are at the property for any reason. So HUD has escrow periods that range from 30 days, 45 days, and 60 days. If we are getting close to that close of escrow period and we are not closed or not even close to being closed, I'd say maybe 5 days prior, submit an extension request. That form is going to be found at blbresources.com, and then on that form you're going to put the reason for the delay, and there's going to be a per diem that's associated with that. It's generally depending on purchase price. So for our market, it's going to be $25 per day, and you buy them in 15-day increments. So $25 a day times 15 days is $375. If your buyer's not going to use that entire 15 days, that's okay, because they can prorate and refund the buyer at the close of escrow, but they have to front that money first. The extension is not a guarantee. It's going to be a request for HUD to review. With an owner-occupant, if it's a lender-related financing issue, then they will probably consider waiving the extension fee. Or if it's a delay on the seller side, maybe with the HOA, they will likely grant a waiver for that extension fee. That is something that you can call BLB Resources directly and explain the situation. Might be best to do it in an email so you've got a paper trail and see if they can waive that first extension policy fee. If not, then just be prepared to get that money ready. It should be a money order made out to HUD. Giving your buyer keys to the property. Even after we close escrow, I highly recommend do not even consider giving your buyer keys to that property. It's a common key that HUD uses on more than one home. So number one, you're giving your buyer essentially access to other HUD-owned homes, which is going to be a big fat no-no. And then secondly, there are a lot of parties that go through that property. Not just you as the buyer's agent, not just us as the listing agent, but HUD has a lot of field service companies, lead-based paint inspection companies, termite companies. A lot of people have access to that home. You don't want your buyer's personal possessions in that house for even one moment where someone else could come in and take it. So don't give your buyer a key at closing. Our advice to you is meet them at the property on the day of closing, and then maybe as a closing gift, you can provide them with a locksmith to change their locks on site, or give them, maybe some brand new locks, because, they're not always good quality locks at the house anyways. Get them a really nice doorknob and lock set from Home Depot, and then bring it to them on the day of close. Take the key out of the lockbox, unlock the home, put the key back in the lockbox and close it up so there's no temptation for the buyer to rekey it when they have time. E-signatures are now accepted, which is fantastic. Used to be that when you had your offer accepted by HUD, all of that acceptance is on HUDHomestore.com, but then after that, we would transfer everything over to hard paper. So you would have to print out the contract package and a bunch of things. And we required, or HUD required, that the buyer signed everything in original ink. So, people used to use blue ink because that's how you knew it was original versus the photocopy. The good thing now is that e-signatures are accepted. So it makes it a lot easier, smoother, streamlined. If your buyer is out of town, they're still able to sign their contracts, which is fantastic. Okay, so once your offer is accepted, you as the buyer's agent, you'll be notified. And hopefully when you signed into HUD Home Store to submit the offer for your client, you did it correctly. A very common mistake is that sometimes an agent will log on to HUD Home Store using their broker's information. So then any notifications go to the broker and not to you. And the trouble with that is, number one, you have no idea that an offer was accepted. And HUD gives a timeline. They say, okay, congratulations, you've got 2 business days to get all of this stuff to us. And if you had put in someone else's email address or their license number on accident, that's the other person that's going to get notified and not you. So just please be sure to make sure that all of the email addresses are correct and that when you're logging onto your account, you're logging onto the correct account. You get notified from HUD Home Store, congratulations, your offer has been accepted. Now we're going to need to go to the formal sales contract portion of it, and hopefully you've already filled it out with all of the correct information for your buyer as well, with their signature pages and their correct email address. Also included with that package is you're going to include the sales contract is going to be prepared by BLB Resources. It's very easy. Buyers now select the closing agent. So hopefully you put the closing agent's information in there correctly as well. We don't use any car forms. So we're not going to use like an AVID or a seller buyer advisory, nothing like that. The only car form that you will use is the agency disclosure. So be sure to get that ready. You're going to also need to include in your HUD sales contract package the pre-approval letter for your buyer. If your buyer is an LLC or a corporation or a trust, the documentation for that trust, LLC, or corporation, and also showing that your buyer is the authorized signer for that entity. A copy of the EMD, so the buyer's earnest money deposit, the original, gets delivered to the listing agent. So if it's, let's say if I'm the listing agent on that, someone is going to drop off to our office or mail to our office a copy of the earnest money deposit. It's going to be a cashier's check or a postal money order, nothing else. Don't give us a personal check. Don't say, hey, we're going to wire the funds as soon as we open escrow. HUD does not execute the contract without the earnest money deposit. But when you give it to the buyer or to the listing agent, make sure you have a copy of it for your package as well, so you can submit that to BLB Resources to show them we gave the earnest money deposit over to the listing agent. We as the listing agent are responsible for also notifying BLB Resources. We have the listing, or we have the EMD. It's good. Here's a copy of it. I think that's it. Those are the other required package items. Okay, so more on the earnest money deposit. As I said, it's going to be a cashier's check or a postal money order, no other forms. So if you go into, let's say, the bank and they say, oh, you know what, a cashier's check costs $14, but if I give you what's called an official check, it's only $12. Would you like to save $2? You don't. You want to pay to get a cashier's check. So the face of the check should say cashier's check. You go to the post office and get a money order, that's fine. Don't go to 7-Eleven or Western Union. Those are not acceptable money orders. And just kind of as a point of reference, what I've heard in the past is that buyers who get a postal money order for $1,000 or $2,000, sometimes they end up having issues because when they're getting their loan, their lender is going to see their earnest money deposit and they're going to say, hey, where did you get this $2,000? So they want a paper trail. If that's going to be the case, it might just be easier for the buyer to go to the bank and get a cashier's check. The cashier's check should be made out to whoever the closing agent is that the buyer has selected. So the buyer gets to choose the escrow and title services. So whatever the escrow company is, that's who the check should be made out to. If the buyer wants, they can say, ABC escrow and whatever their name is, so that they can go and put that check into any account. If it falls out for any reason and that earnest money deposit check is given back to them. Or they can go back to the same bank and put it in. It doesn't matter who it's made out to if they're the owner of that account. Somewhere in the memo line, please make sure that you have the FHA case number and the property address. That makes it really easy to reference. If someone drops a stack of checks, they're going to know exactly what this is for. And then the amount that the buyer is going to make the earnest money check out to is always going to be, in our market, again, it depends on the purchase price, but in our market, it's going to be $2,000, okay? And then don't forget, you've got 2 business days to get that original cashier's check or postal money order to the listing agent. And as I said, we have to scan a copy and upload it to BLB Resources to confirm that we have it in our possession and that we have checked it and that it's good to go. I know that the buyer is selecting the escrow company, but don't give the check to the escrow company. Legally, the escrow company can't be holding a check for a transaction that they're not doing. So, they have no business holding onto a check unless they already have that fully executed contract, which they're not going to get unless the listing agent has that EMD to show the seller, we're good to go. Go ahead and sign on your end. Proof of funds, I think all of us are professionals. I don't think you would just take a buyer out in your car or meet a buyer at a property to show them a home without knowing that they can buy that house. So please make sure you get that in advance. If the buyer's paying with cash, just something to show that they've got enough money to close that transaction, in their name, ideally within 30 days. I think dated within 30 days makes sense. They're going to get a loan. Make sure that pre-qualification letter is there. And then once the offer is accepted, call the lender and have them update that pre-qual letter to specify maybe the purchase price, the property address, and all the details of the transaction. Okay, so things like the lead-based paint addendum, if the property is built before 1978, you're going to sign one with the contract package. However, if it's built before 1978, if your buyer is also an FHA owner-occupant buyer, HUD is going to do a lead-based paint inspection, and they're going to send you a copy of that lead-based paint inspection. And then if the work is going to be $4,000 or less, HUD automatically orders the remediation. That is at no cost to the buyer. HUD pays for that. And then they'll give you an updated lead-based paint receipt addendum, and then let you know that it's been cleared. If you have a conventional buyer, you don't get that. And then if your buyer is FHA and then they decide to change financing types to conventional or anything else, they're going to get a bill. They're going to be asked to pay for the work that HUD had paid for, thinking that your buyer was going to be an FHA buyer. Flood zone disclosure and addendum. Documentation, I think I mentioned this. If your buyer is an LLC or a corporation or a trust, make sure that you get the articles of incorporation or the trust documentation. And also key is to show that the person who's signing the contract is the authorized signer for that entity. Carbon monoxide detector, anything that's absolutely required in the state of California, HUD still sells these properties as is. So that means carbon monoxide detector, the addendum is the buyer acknowledging that these things are absolutely required and that the buyer is going to be solely responsible for installing these things as soon as they take possession of the property after close of escrow. Okay, so HUD recognizes some things are necessary, but they are able to get waived from all of the requirements as long as the buyer acknowledges that they are going to be responsible for this. That doesn't mean the buyer doesn't have to do the work. Buyer does have to do the work after close. We very rarely will need this, but sometimes it's safe if upfront you can get a copy of your buyer's driver's license and social security card in advance. Sometimes you might type in on HUD Home Store when you submit the offer, you put in the buyer's name, you put in their social security number, and then HUD will cross-reference that. I think Mike had mentioned on the Good Neighbor Next Door program, the buyer's going to get 50% off on their home. They only get to do that once. They can track that. If your buyer is buying a home as an owner-occupant, HUD's going to track that to see if they've purchased another home as an owner-occupant in the last 2 years. So make sure everything on there matches. While we're talking about that, when you submit the offer for your buyer, make sure that you're using the name for the buyer the way they want to appear on title. Okay, so if you call them John, but maybe their official name is like Raymond or Jonathan, then make sure that when you check with your client before you submit that offer, how do you want your name to appear on title? Okay, and then submit the offer that way, please. Okay, so we talked about the inspections. All of the utilities are going to be shut off. So before the buyer is allowed to turn on the utilities, they have to submit a request to the field service manager for HUD. Can we please get the water turned on? And then they will sign off, yes, you can. And that's the form that you forward to the water company. Otherwise, the water company is going to say, you're not the owner. You're not allowed to just turn on the water at a house. Gas and electricity, they don't care so much. But with water, for sure, you're going to have some issues unless you get this request form filled out and signed by the field service manager on behalf of HUD. Keep in mind, when the field service manager goes out to the property right at the beginning, before it's even listed for sale, they're going to do some tests. So they're going to kind of do an eyeball view of the house, and then they're also going to put some air pressure into the pipe to see if it's holding pressure. If it's not holding pressure, they suspect that there is a plumbing leak somewhere. The FSM is not going to do any further investigation. They're not going to like figure out where the leak is or how severe it is. They just mark it. Water cannot be turned on at this house. And then on HUD Home Store, David will show you where you can see these addendums where the field service management company will make a note, and you can see that as well in advance. Here's the best thing about HUD Homes, and I think that in the chat earlier on, someone had asked, like, well, hey, when are they going to be hiring listing brokers for HUD? Right now, they're not. But when they do have an opportunity available, they're going to check everybody who applies. They get flooded with applications. You're not going to be the only one. They're going to get a ton. And they're going to look you up by your NAID number, your NAID number. So if you don't have an active NAID, right there, you're already gone. But let's say you have an active NAID or your broker does, they're going to look you up and they're going to say, okay, has this person sold some HUD homes for us in the past? And they can track you by that. Hopefully you have, and hopefully they've all gone good, because if they have a bad experience, they probably mark the file. The other thing they'll do is they'll probably Google you and they'll see, hey, is this agent currently advertising HUD homes for sale? And if you're not, these are the rules you need to follow. And the great thing is, you do not need to ask permission from the assigned listing broker. HUD is giving you permission now. Yes, you may advertise HUD homes for sale, which is great if you are low on inventory and need to get some information into the hands of a prospective buyer, or shoot, even a prospective seller in that neighborhood. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, or Mr. and Mrs. Neighbor, this house next door is on the market. Who do you know who wants to move into the neighborhood? No one? Great. Well, hey, what about you? Are you ever thinking about selling your home? So if you want that, you're free to do it. Just make sure that you're following the rules. So number one is you always have to make sure you're advertising HUD homes in a professional, ethical, and positive manner. Don't use anything disparaging. Don't make it seem like you have some kind of a special in with HUD that the buyer can't get from anywhere else. If you are not the listing agent for HUD, don't say that you are. You can advertise the home and you can say, for more information, call me. You're not saying that you're the listing agent for HUD. When you're referring to the properties, you can call them HUD home, HUD owned, or HUD acquired. Simply for sale works as well. They don't like terms like repo or REO, things like that. Number one, I guess technically it is an REO, but HUD does not refer to these as REOs. They just want it to be known as a HUD home, okay? There's an equal opportunity logo that you can see in the bottom of your screen. That is really important for HUD. They want to make sure that all buyers are given an equal opportunity to purchase the homes. Make sure that you're including that same logo on all of your advertising, your signage, your website, your flyers. It's very easy to get one. You can Google Equal Housing Opportunity logo and you'll get flooded with possibilities to use. If you're going to be advertising, make sure that you are advertising everything as accurately as possible. So if you know, let's say that the property is in a flood zone or is in an HOA, go ahead and put it into your advertising. There's no reason not to. You save yourself and the buyer some time, having them fall in love with the house and then finding out later, oh, I can't get insurance because it's in a flood zone. Just go ahead and put that out there up front. Make sure that you're adhering to all of the federal, state, county, city, and local real estate commission advertising regulations. If, let's say, if your city says you're not allowed to put bandit signs on there, buy a HUD home from John, then don't do it, because HUD's not going to protect you and say, oh, no, it's cool. We told John he gets to advertise HUD homes. No. Whatever is the strictest of the rules, go ahead and follow that. If you're going to show a HUD home, make sure that the property is secure when you arrive and when you leave. And if it's not secure when you arrive, please let the listing agent know so that we can see who has shown the property before you, so we can reach out and confirm, hey, was the house open when you were there? Was the window broken when you were there? We always use the super key so that we can track the activity and make sure that you always put the key back, because if the next agent shows up and says, hey, Caroline, there's no key in the lockbox, well, we go down the list and we say, who was the last person to show the home? Do you have the key? Okay, so please remember to put the key back in the lockbox. It's not fair for the next agent or the next buyer if they go all the way out to the property, especially nowadays, and they're not able to even show the home. Things that you're not allowed to do is advertise the homes before they're listed for sale to the general public. You know, one example of that is the Good Neighbor Next Door. Good Neighbor Next Door is only available to certain buyers. So we as the listing agents, we don't put them on the MLS because that's not fair. Not every buyer is allowed to buy that home for 50% off. That's going to be on the HUD Home Store website only. Don't use any FHA or HUD logos and seals. Anything that's going to imply to a buyer that you are affiliated with HUD or with FHA in a way that might give them an unfair advantage over other buyers if they work with you versus another agent. Don't state or imply that the price of a property is anything other than the list price on the HUD website. And again, don't ever give out the HUD keys. Don't refer to the houses as distressed, repo, foreclosed, you know, must sell, nothing like that. And then for signage, you know, only one agent is allowed to put a sign in the yard and to advertise on the property itself. You know, it gets confusing. Can you imagine if you pull up to a house and there's like 7 for sale signs? Only one agent puts that on the MLS and only one agent puts a sign in the yard. Don't destroy, damage, or remove any advertising. Even if the other agent is not following the rules, best thing to do is just take a photo and let the listing agent know, hey, I thought only one person's allowed to put a sign out there. How come this guy's got like a, you know, like a little sign in the yard? Let us know, we'll go out and we'll take care of it. Where can you advertise? I mean, gosh, there's so many ways to do it now, and you know, you can do it for free. Used to be you put it in magazines and like home magazines, the newspaper flyers. You know, you don't see a lot of that anymore. Now you're seeing a lot of online advertising. If you are creative with video, that's a great opportunity for you to maybe go to the house and shoot a video of yourself talking about the home and some of the things about the neighborhood, and then put it on your website. And, you know, you just say, for more information, call so-and-so. And you're not saying that you're the listing agent for HUD. You are just saying, this home is available and I can help you to buy it. Okay? I am now going to pass this off to David. David, are you on? I don't know if you can unmute yourself.
I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Okay, take over my screen, please.
Okay, can everybody hear me at this point?
Yes.
Okay,
I can
perfect.
hear you.
Good. I'm David Jervis. I'm the Caldwell banker. I've been doing this for some time, not as long as Mike. Although I'm getting close. You know, I start to look at a side by side here, and there's a little bit more white, but that's all right. First thing I want to do is, again, thank everybody for showing up here. I'll answer one quick question. This is from Richard. I don't understand the yard sign topic. In the old days with Golden Feather, there was a lot of signage issues because they didn't really list properties with brokers, and agents could have open houses at any time. They go get a key, have an open house, stick a sign in the yard. So that's kind of what she's referring back to, as those days are gone. Now they use an outsourcing company who hires brokers like myself, Caroline, and Mike. And that's where we're the ones who put the sign up. We put it in the multiple listing service. Since Zillow started linking directly to the multiple listing service and to different, you know, brokerage sites, we no longer have the issue of other agents putting in the HUD properties as their own listings. But Caroline really basically refers to the fact that you can advertise these, again, without our permission, as long as you follow certain guidelines and as long as it shows active in the HUD Home Store. Again, you can't offer something that's not active in the HUD Home Store. If it's in the MLS, if it's in the HUD Home Store, then go ahead and run Facebook ads, do Instagram, IGTV. Right now, IGTV on Instagram is probably the hottest marketing medium there is going on. People love video. Spend $100, get yourself a gimbal, go out there and take your iPhone and start doing, you know, live shows, live video right from the property, and you're going to start getting traffic. Even if you're not an expert yet, it gives the president, you know, gives the public the assumption that you are, because you're there talking to them about it. So I'm going to take you right now to a different screen. We're going to go off of the screens that they have. Yes. Okay, and we are going to go to screen 2. Okay, and everybody should be able to see the screen. It's the HUD.gov/HUDhomes.com. Can everybody see that screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, this is where you wind up at if you type in www.HUD Home Store. And I'm going to drag this over just a little bit because I'm using two monitors. And now I'm kind of looking at it. Okay, here are the first things I'd like you to take a look at. Again, they mentioned this earlier. Here's your two app links right here, Android or iPhone. That's where you can find the HUD Mobile Home Store app. And take a look at that. When you get on, that's free. It's written by a company called Yardi. And it'll say
David?
HUD Home Store mobile app. Yes.
I'm
I'm here.
looking at a blue screen. I'm looking at a blue desktop, rather.
How about that?
That's better.
Okay, because I am using dual screens, I'll have to look over here a little bit sideways. So again, up here, these are your links to go to your app store and get what you need to get. We use this again all the time. The only time that you won't be able to use this is when you're actually submitting an offer. But everything that appears on the HUD Home Store site is also going to appear here. Okay, in order to utilize the site, you're going to have to register. You're going to be registering as a bidder. If you haven't done that already, go ahead and do that today. What you're going to need is your company's NAID number, name and address ID. This is a number that's issued to the broker, and then it's updated on an annual basis. So ask your broker, ask your manager, I need to find my NAID number so I can do my update. Now, you may find that they have a NAID, but they haven't updated it. That process is very simple. The broker or manager will be able to go into the site here and access the applications, the recertification forms. If it's just a simple recertification, that takes about 20 minutes, provided no pertinent information is changed. Pertinent information would be you haven't moved your company location, you haven't changed the broker of record. All the information stayed the same since the NAID was originally obtained. Once you have that, you'll click on the link that says bidder. And we should have just switched over to the bidder registration form. Is that what's showing on your screen? That's a question.
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. So in order to do your registration, you'll click here. You're going to be a selling listing broker, and what your role is. Are you the principal broker? Are you an associate broker? Or are you a holder of a license? Okay, so you can check here, and let's say that you're a selling agent. Your broker's NAID is going to go in here. So for example, I'll plug in my NAID at this point. Okay, you'll plug in your own license number. The date you were licensed, what state you were licensed in, and when it expires, okay? Then you're gonna click add, and what should happen is that all the offices that are associated with that NAID are going to pop up. So for example, I'm in Newport Beach, and I don't see it here. This is all of our different Caldwell Banker residential brokerage companies. So I'm currently registered at the Palos Verdes address. Although I can work at any of these offices, I want to make sure that the address that I'm utilizing is the office that I actually work in, because that makes it a little bit easier. So that'll auto-populate all that information once you put that in. The next thing you do is you go down and create your own username, your own password. You'll confirm the password. You'll create your own security questions, and then your contact information. Okay, and again, the contact information is critical, especially if you work in an office like I do, where we've got something like 3,500 agents just in California, because once the bid confirmation comes through, it's going to be coming through and notifying us of who the selling agent is. And as Caroline mentioned, if you've used your broker's or manager's login because you didn't want to go through this process, by the time that email and the message gets through to that manager, the time period to accept the offer could have passed. I've had cases where I've worked with large companies and said, I need to talk to John because he has an accepted offer. Well, John's the office manager. Well, John, how about this offer you submitted? He said, I didn't submit an offer. I've got 3,500 agents. So guess what? 72 hours passed. We couldn't find who the agent was. The buyer lost the chance to make the bid. So always go through and complete this information. Again, you're going to check the terms. You're going to do the I'm not a robot CAPTCHA and go through. So once you're registered, you're in for good. The only thing you'll be required to do is once a year, change your password. And then if you should change companies, all you'll do is you'll go back into the functions, the bidder functions. We'll cancel that. Let's go here to home. Okay, I'm already logged in at the moment, or I should be. So once you're in, you will go to bidder functions. No, it's not letting me do that. That's strange. I might have to log in again. You can change your broker affiliation and the NAID number that you're registered under. So if you move from Keller Williams to EXP, which seems to be the trend today, then you'd go back in and register your name under the new broker and under the NAID for the EXP company that you went to. Okay, so let's see if I'm logged in right now. Okay, I'm now logged in. Once you've created a registration and done a login, the first thing the screen that's going to pop up when you go into the portal is going to be review your bid should you have any pending on a HUD property. But let's go back to home now for just a moment. A couple of things I'd like to have you take a look at on the screen. So we've already covered the login function, how to register yourself as a bidder. We're back at the home. My suggestion is disregard everything here. Good neighbor next door, nonprofits, dollar government homes. Nonprofits get their own access to the properties before we do. Dollar homes don't exist in California. I'm not sure what states they exist in right now. And good neighbor next door, generally what happens is this. Watch the map to the right. You see all these states right now, they're in dark blue. If I click good neighbor next door, now we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are the only states that turn dark blue that have good neighbor next door properties available. So what generally happens with your clients when they're searching on this site, they click that link, they select a search, they go to California and they search and they think, wow, there are 17 properties I can get for 50% off. And that's just not the case because none of them in California right now are good neighbor next door properties. Again, the criteria for that program, it has to be in a revitalization zone. There are a few in San Bernardino, Riverside, but the majority of what we see come through is going to be in Los Angeles and basically from downtown LA, follow the 110 freeway all the way down to maybe close to Long Beach, San Pedro, a couple blocks on either side. There's still some other areas that pop up in there that would be considered revitalization. If you go and Google on Google HUD, ACA, or HUD revitalization zones, it will take you to a program where you can actually see a map of all the zones in California that fall under ACA, asset control areas, or revitalization. So again, for a property to qualify for good neighbor next door, it's got to be in that location. It's got to be a single family and it has to be FHA financeable. So right now what we see again are we don't have any in the state of California. The last two just closed relatively recently. So let's narrow it in just a little bit more. Let's go and see what do we have in Los Angeles County. And we'll do a search. We don't have too many. We only have one property right now that's in the city of Pomona. And again, but we'll go ahead and take a look at this and use it for our examples at the moment. This is the property address right here. Tells you the bedroom, the bath count, the total rooms, when the property was built. It's a single family, number of stories, if there's an HOA fee. Is it revitalization? No. So that tells you right now that you know it's not a good neighbor. Is it an opportunity zone? No. Gives you the lot size. Tells you when the property was listed. Right now it tells you it's still under exclusive, meaning what? Only owner occupants can buy the home. When does the exclusive period end? On 6/30/2020 at midnight Central Time. Again, keep in mind, everything on HUD is Central Time, CT, so that's 2 hours difference than our time. Gives you the list price. Is the property insurable? Yes, i.e., meaning there's some repairs that need to be done. Is it eligible for 203K? Yes. Make a note right now, due to the changes that we're going through right now with the pandemic, you're probably going to find 203K is not going to be an option at this point. as almost every lender that offers the program has shut that program down temporarily. We don't know when it's going to come back. I don't know if that applies to conventional on their rehab programs, but I would have an idea that it does as well. So right now, what we're really looking at is basically bread and butter FHA, or again, the IE program. And as Mike mentioned, what that means is that the buyer is able to add up to $10,000 over the base loan amount to cover the repairs that might be done after escrow. Now we'll take a look and say, well, what might these repairs be? So we'll go ahead here. Can you guys see a white screen now that says listing disclosures and statements?
Yes.
Okay. This is where you're going to find out why a property was classified as IE. There's going to be a blanket disclosure here. It's going to tell you if the property's in a flood zone. And some of the stuff it's going to say, which is kind of a CYA for HUD that says, even though states mandate that we put smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, et cetera, in the properties, we're exempt because we're HUD, we're not going to do it. That's going to be your responsibility or your buyers. So take a look down here, repairs. What is it missing? Carbon monoxide detectors. There's a damaged window, there's defective paint. That typically means you've got flaking paint surfaces. There's damaged siding and soffit, and the HVAC system is damaged per the PCR. Okay. We go down a little bit lower, HUD is going to have to put a form in there called the PCR. This is the property condition report. This is all the information that HUD has about the property, and this is all the information that we're given about the property. So we go through and say, what would they find? Was the HVAC tested? Not applicable. The furnace is okay, but the system is missing the ductwork. The air conditioning unit is missing. Okay, someone decided they needed that more than the property did and took it with them. On the electrical, they said this is okay. They used a generator to test the electrical system. They used a generator to test the built-in appliances. The plumbing said it passed the pressure test. The water heater was visually inspected. They did what they call winterization. It's funny, HUD figured out that it was easier for them to winterize every single property in the United States rather than try to figure out which properties freeze or don't freeze. So when you go into a HUD home, there won't be any water, but there'll be antifreeze in the toilets. And it's 85 degrees outside. Okay, the roofing is in acceptable condition, yes. And they'll say this is a visual inspection, and this might have been a visual inspection from the ground up. The inspector looked and said, looks good to me. So keep in mind for your clients and for yourself, this is in no way, shape, or form meant to be a physical inspection. This is going to be a key one right here. Did it pass a pressure test? Yes. And the generator, did the electrical supply pass? Yes. The reason those two things are critical is that will determine whether or not you can get those utilities turned on for your inspections. Okay. So this is what that form looks like. And this is going to be on HUD Home Store. You're also going to be getting an initial lead-based paint report that tells you that HUD does not know anything at this point about lead-based paint. Once you're into the transaction, you'd be the winning bidder and you're using FHA financing, HUD will be doing a lead-based paint inspection, and you will be getting a report, and also if it is going to fall within HUD's guidelines. So there will be a second LBP generated after that report comes in on the property. Now, HUD will do on an FHA transaction up to $4,000 worth of lead-based paint remediation. The down thing is that should the estimate come back in at $4,002, HUD will not let your buyer pay the $2 and get the work done. They're going to ask you to change the financing type. And that would be to 203K. Now, they would give you that credit of $4,000 in the 203K transaction to get that work done in addition to the $2 extra. So that'll be built into it. So those are the forms that you're going to see. And if we go back to the other screen, it's going to be in the tabs called addendums right here. A lot of information you can find here. You can find the PCR, lead-based paint, and the disclosures. You can get a copy of the Selling Broker Handbook, which is the HUD Bible. Anything that you need to know about selling a HUD property is going to be found in the Selling Broker's Handbook. You can download this, keep it on your desktop. It's a searchable form. The way it works for us is if we have a question and we call our asset manager, the first thing they ask us is, did you look in the selling broker's handbook? Well, no, we'll go back and look. Second time we call, they ask us the same question again. And by the third call, we don't usually make it because we found the answer. Some of this stuff is where a lot of the confusion gets in. All these things right here, we do not use these any longer. We don't use any of this until you have a contract. It's going to be generated by HUD, but in the old days, we did have to use these forms, but you can just skip them. There's some stuff in here that also good. The quick reference guide is a good one. This will explain the buyer select closing agent addendum. The carbon monoxide detector will come with the offer. Lender Q&A, if your lender has questions, this is a good one, your most common selling agent questions. So you'll see that. Also, many of these forms we put into the supplement section of your local MLS. And in the agent comments, I'll always put in the bottom in big letters, please review and share with your clients all the documents that are in the supplement section, because it'll have everything relevant to the transaction at hand. But these are where you can find these items right here. Okay, we go back to the property, and again, we can take a look. Caroline mentioned briefly the ability to market the property. You know, something that a lot of people find very, very easy is that a new listing comes up, and let's say you happen to work Pomona, and this is a good area, you know about it, and you want to go out as soon as this comes up at 8 o'clock in the morning and start marketing it. HUD makes it pretty easy to do that. All they do is click right there, and all of a sudden, can you guys see the flyer that's in front of me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Notice there's a nice square space to put your business card. Slap a copy of your business card on there, take it to Kinko's, wherever you go to get copies, make 100 copies and go start knocking on doors in the neighborhood. If you're out there at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're going to be the first one out. As brokers, we're not going to get notification on that property probably till maybe 10, 11 o'clock in the afternoon. It may not get into the multiple listing until 4 or 5 o'clock that day, depending on when we receive notification. If you're the first one out there with information on this home that all the neighbors have been watching for the last 6 months wondering what's going on, you can bet they're going to want to talk to you because you've got information on a HUD home. Right? What does the consumer think? HUD home, government home. It's a steal, it's a good deal. Why do they think this? Because they stay up all night watching HGTV. So this is what they're going to take a look at. It's got a couple pictures, but it's got the basic information. And again, what you're really trying to do is make those contacts with the neighbors in the area. You might get a chance to sell the property to one of them. Maybe they have a friend or a family member that wants to buy one. Maybe they're tenants and they're looking to buy a home. So this is just a quick way to do it. I know certain companies and agents, they have a template already set up that as soon as the property comes out, they'll go back and they'll start scraping all the photos off the site, downloading them, save image as, they'll drop them right into their own pre-set up flyer, and they'll go out and start doing it. I can't tell you how often in certain areas with certain companies, I'll get out there at maybe 10 o'clock to put my lockbox up, my signs in the windows, etc. And I will see flyers on every door within a 2 or 3 block radius advertising my listing. And did they have to ask me? They didn't have to ask me, because as long as it's in the HUD Home Store site, they're free to market the property. Now, let's go back to the other view right here on this. This is kind of important right now. Okay, right here is the bid opening date, 6/26. So we see that's 3 days from today. Today's Tuesday, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Okay, so that means that there is a chance they are going to open the bids on this one on Friday morning. There is also sometimes a chance that they may let it run through the weekend. So for example, if it said the bid opening date is on the 24th, that would be the Saturday, and we'd automatically know that it's going to be opened on Monday, since Monday's the next business day. HUD doesn't open bids on Saturday or Sunday. The bidding continues through the weekend. Now, one thing that we want to look at though, again, Mike, it was that confusing section that Mike talked about. The list date and the bid opening date. We know the opening date is going to be on Friday. Now, if it ran through the weekend, should we see a change in period deadline from exclusive to extended, and that change would occur on Friday, watch your calendars closely, because you'll want to submit the bid twice. once before the end of the period when it changed and once after. So that's the only time you're allowed to submit 2 bids for the same buyer on the same property. If looking over on the calendar, you see that that property is going to change status from one to another over the weekend. That's the only time. See if there's anything else on this page. You can get the agent information here. It'll tell you who the listing agent is. In this case, it's Louis Pacheco, Tri-Counties Realty. You can always contact the listing agent directly, or your agent can contact the listing agent and find out the information. The amenities tab, they really don't tell us much, and the maps, they don't tell us much either. Let's go back again to the search screen. And this time again, I wanted to search California, and let's say Riverside, and see what we have. Okay, Riverside has 2 properties, and you'll notice that these are extended and extended. What does that mean? That means that anybody can bid on the properties, owner occupants, investors. The good thing about an extended property is it means it's been on the market for a while. Sometimes these are the ones that you're able to get a better price on because they've been on the market for a while. Now, they could have fallen out. We don't know why they fell out in many cases. Typically, in my own experience, they fall out because, one, they find conditions that they don't like and they didn't understand as is, or the agent they're working with wasn't clear that all the cost in a HUD transaction was at the expense of the buyer. Okay, so if we take a look again, extended means that anybody can buy this property. If I go back and take a look at the entire state, just to see, there's only like 17. Okay, so we've got a mix here: exclusive, extended, 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 and exclusive. So again, we always just have to remember that the exclusive properties are the ones that only owner occupants can bid on. HUD will also post on these if there's been recent price reductions. Okay. One thing about the HUD product, if it comes on the market today, don't count on being able to go in. If it's listed for $350, you're probably not going to be able to make an offer for your client at $300 and get it. HUD sticks fairly close to the asking price for at least the initial 30 days. You might see 2 or 3% room in there for someone to ask for closing costs, things like that. But let's go back again to the one in
When you log into it and then it.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't just, see how I can get it.
Pomona.
Because yeah, all I just do is put my username and password and I get right in.
We do have a few in San Bernardino County as well.
Tell me that one.
I don't have that right now.
Okay, so we covered all the information up here. And again, your bid submission deadline, 6/25 at 11:59 p.m. Central Time. Again, 10 o'clock our time. I always tell the clients I'm working with, I don't like to be any later than 9 o'clock in case I have computer problems, things like that. I want to get my bid in. Again, if you got your bid in first or last, that makes no difference because HUD is a net-driven system, meaning the only thing that HUD will look at when they select their bid is the net to HUD and nothing else. They won't be looking at your buyer qualification. They won't be looking at proof of funds. They won't be looking at the nice letter that said what wonderful families they are and how much they love the home. It just doesn't quite work that way. Okay, so I think we've got everything here. All right, so a couple of things I want to show you before we actually go to the bid. This is a good one. If you've made an offer on a HUD property and you didn't get it, I guarantee the only reason you didn't get it was that you didn't offer enough money or you asked for too much in closing costs. HUD is the only entity that I know, though, that will tell you what the property is actually sold for. So if you had made a bid on this property, you knew what it was listed at, and you made an offer for X, this tells you what the net was to HUD. Net would be list price, less closing costs, less broker's commissions. In this case, an owner occupant bought it. The date was submitted on the 1st, the date was open on the 2nd, and they accepted on the 2nd. Okay. This is good information to have because a lot of times buyers will make an offer at what they want to make. And their decision is usually driven by probably one thing, and that is what Zillow tells them. Every time that I sell a property, I always make sure that I'm showing my agent or my buyer the comps for the neighborhood to make the determination based upon what we actually see versus what an algorithm on Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, things like that might have shown them. Many times you can go back and say, look, this is what the net was. Remember I told you to offer $1,000 more or to ask for $1,000 less in closing costs? This is the proof in the pudding. This is why you didn't get it. No other reason. So HUD will publish this, and it typically comes out about 2 weeks after the bid is accepted. That gives time for the contracts to make their loops, for it to become fully ratified, and the escrow opened. So if the property should fall out of escrow, you'll know it'll come back up, because if you made an offer on it, you're going to get an email, and then you can always watch the HUD Home Store site and see what comes back up. So we'll go back home here. So we saw the bid results right there. Okay, so let's go back again to California. And we'll go to Pomona. And we'll do a search. We'll go back and click on the hot link right here. Okay, so we've shown the property. The buyers love it. They want to make an offer. And this is one of the best parts about it. Click on the bid that says submit an offer. You're going to register again, this time as a selling broker. You're going to plug in your NAID. Your real estate license. And check the box that says a robot. Even if you are a robot, check the box that says you're not a robot. This is your bid submission form in its entirety. To me, as an agent that writes offers and represents buyers, this is really wonderful, because I'm not having to do 37 pages of offer disclosure, seller disclosures, all this stuff that I've got to DocuSign back and forth that may not even get looked at. Okay, so this makes it easy. HUD starts off at the top and it says, here's the list price. The price you want to offer is what? $400,000. Okay. What type of financing? Is it FHA or is it not? Well, we know that they're offering 203B IE, which is that $10,000 add-on. We know they're offering 203K, or it could be conventional or other financing not involving HUD, or paying cash. So you check the appropriate box, and let's say we're doing the repair escrow. Number 5, this is where people lose it a lot of times. Seller will pay reasonable and customary costs, but not more than actual costs, or more paid than a typical seller in the area for obtaining financing. How much will they pay? Well, they already said earlier in the conversation that HUD will pay up to 3%. Okay, that's $12,000. Now, our $400,000 offer to HUD is a $364,000 offer. In the days that we have now, with interest rates so low and fees so low, always consult with your lender first and find out how much does the buyer really need? What's the actual cost of getting this loan? Contact the escrow that you plan on using and say, I'm going to be doing a HUD sale. 1, have you been approved by HUD? And 2, will you get me some rates, because my buyer is going to have to pay both this escrow, the title, for both the lender and for the seller, both sides of escrow fees, city tax, county tax, anything associated with the sales, the buyer's expense, except for drawing of the deed and recording of the deed. So that's why it's important to do this. I know, for example, Los Angeles, if you're selling in the city of Los Angeles, you've got almost $5.60 per thousand of transfer tax. So that is definitely a shocker to a buyer if you did not know this and did not tell them when they get their estimated closing statement and says they have to come in with how much more? 7,000 more? Guess who doesn't look very good in that situation? It's not the escrow, it's not the seller, it's you. So do your homework. If they don't need that much, then don't ask for that much. But let's say they do need $6,000. Okay. So now I've got 316,000. How could we correct, 60. So now you got $370,000. This is the number right here that HUD is going to look at. All right, now, if we want to make changes to make our offer more competitive, there's a couple of things we can do. If we think the value is there, we might change the offer to 406. Okay, now we brought the offer back more in line with the net. The one other thing that you can do to improve your offer, and you do this with your broker's permission, and only if you think it's really worth it, is that you're free to change your commission. So let's say this buyer's got a big family and you want to look good because you know you're going to get referrals from them. So maybe you'll change it to a $10,000 flat rate. Okay, now we just bumped up the net to HUD. All right, so this is what we want to have become the big number right here. We want the number to HUD to be as close to the list price as possible if we feel, based upon a market analysis, that the property is truly worth it. A lot of cases, people go completely crazy and bid the property way up just because they wanted to be desperate and get it, only to find out they've got a low appraisal. And does HUD come back and renegotiate? No, they don't. So if your property does not appraise for what you've offered, then you're kind of stuck. You either pay the difference or you cancel and then come back in and rebid. And again, HUD has no problem with you doing that. I know we just sold one in Downey. They offered $625. It was listed at $590. It appraised at $605. They canceled. They rolled the dice. They rebid at $605. They got the property again. The longest that I've seen was another property. The lady bid on it, I think 8 times. She was in escrow for almost 9 or 10 months. And she finally got the property. They kept bidding over the appraised value, and it finally kept going up enough to where she was able to get the property, and she still lives there today. So these are things that we can do to manipulate the numbers to make it work for HUD. Either the price, the closing costs that we're asking for, or our commission. Now this one I kind of like because you can't touch that. That's my commission. And so if you say, call me up, Dave, I'm going to have to reduce my commission to make this deal work. Do you think you can help me? Sorry, but I can't. HUD won't let me change the listing agent's commission, even if I'm listing or the selling agent. Now, right now, this box, you'll see owner occupant is the one that's grayed out. I would not be able to check any of these because this is listed again, exclusive only to owner occupants. This is the bid box you're going to check. You may hold my offer as a backup. Important questions. They just added these last year. Is your buyer affiliated in any way with HUD, the field service company, the guy that cuts the grass for him, anything? You have to check no, because HUD will not sell this to anybody that's affiliated with HUD or its vendors. A good example, my mom lives in Texas, sweet little lady. I wanted to buy a HUD home for her in the town that she lives in. I don't sell in Texas. I don't live in Texas. I'm not licensed there. They said, sorry, you can't because you work for HUD. Okay, because they don't want any conflict of interest. Okay, the next question, does the selling broker have an interest in this property that he's making an offer on? Check yes or no. They don't care if you have an interest, but if you're buying as an investment, they're not going to pay you a commission. Okay, now there are cases that if you are buying it as an owner occupant, you would still be able to collect the commission on the sale. And that's sometimes case by case. So let's say that, no, you don't have an interest. This is the best part here. All that HUD's going to ask for is the buyer's social, the buyer's first name, last name, their address, their email address, and their cell phone. They put phone number here, but we always use cell phone because that's what DocuSign uses to verify. And then your buyer select closing agent information. Again, in the old days, HUD had their own companies and we had no choice in the services. The problem that we found was that the companies that won the bid sometimes won it by offering a price that was so cheap they couldn't perform. I think it was maybe 4 years ago that we had a company that bid it so low they couldn't perform. We were waiting 6 months for escrow instructions. It was absolutely insane. BOB employees had to actually go out to that company and run it until they could get it closed down and go somewhere else. So if you don't know what escrow company to use, you can plug in right here. Like let's say you want to use a title company escrow, say Old Republic. All right. There are a list of Old Republic title companies that have escrows that have already been approved with HUD. So let's say Irvine. Okay, so what's going to happen is this is going to auto-populate. The agent's got to auto-populate. We don't need to put this information in. This, you're going to want to make sure that the information is correct. The broker's name is in here and his email. The reason this is here is that the broker is the one signing the contract. You as the agent will get a copy of it to review and make sure that the information is correct. On the DocuSign, you'll then click the link that'll forward on. It'll go to the buyer, buyer 1, buyer 2, buyer 3, buyer 4. From there, it'll go to the broker for his signature. So the contract will only have the broker's signature or the designated signature, which might be the office manager. Once you've done that, you're going to click continue. You'll have one more box that says, please review everything that you've submitted, make sure it's correct, and check the box that everything you've submitted is true. And it gives you some little instructions. It's telling me I've got errors already because I didn't fill in all the information. But this is a very, very simple form. What will happen is that once this is completed, you'll be getting a form called a bid confirmation. It'll show your buyers that their offer was submitted, a registration number. It'll show them what the offering price was, what they asked for in closing cost, what your fees are, what the listing agent's making, and it should show when the bid's going to be opened. Now, once the bid is opened, and let's say that you're the winning bidder, you'll get an email that states, congratulations, you won the bid on the HUD property. The next thing you're going to do is go back in on bidder functions and click on accepted bids. Okay, once you have an accepted bid, you click here and your bid is going to show up. Now this is where you're going to start doing your downloads. In this bidder section portal, you're going to be putting in and verifying that all the names are correct, that the buyer's name is correct, the address is correct, the social's correct. If you have to change anything, you can change it there. You'll also be asked to upload the proof of funds, black out the statement with the account information on it. You'll be asked to upload the pre-qualification letter, and make a note on this. On the pre-qual, it must state the buyer's name, the property address, and the financing type. It doesn't have to have loan amounts, things like that, but it must have those 3 items. You'll also be uploading a copy of the earnest money deposit. So before you give that earnest money deposit to the listing broker, make sure you take a copy of it because they'll ask you to upload that as well. Once that's done and that information is uploaded, then the DocuSign process will be started. You may also be asked to upload some information from the title company / escrow company at the same time. Oh, on title, make sure that when you're talking about title, talk to your favorite rep and ask them if they can make sure that you get an REO rate on the title policy. It's not published, but that'll save your buyer maybe a few $100s in the transaction. You may also ask the escrow company if they'll give you any kind of discount on the fees, etc., because the less money coming out of your buyer's pocket makes you as the agent look a lot better. Okay, so in this case, we see that I have no more bid. So once the bid process makes the loop, then it'll go through the signature process. At the end, you're going to get a confirmation said to notify your bid has been accepted, and you usually get a copy of that signed bid that same day or the next day. Escrow is also going to receive notification. They'll automatically open up the escrow. The listing agent will be contacted to send the deposit to escrow, and you'll start the ball rolling. The other thing at that time you're going to do is you'll be getting a link to open up have the utilities opened up. That link is going to be found at BLB Resources. It's going to be under the tab called Agent Resources for California. And this is where all the forms that you might use in the transaction are going to be found. So what we'd look here is at the FSM form, that stands for Field Service Management. Utility Activation Form. You'll fill this out. You'll collect $150 either in a money order or a cashier's check and mail this to the field service company. They'll then send you the letters to have the utilities turned on for a 3-day period so your buyer can get all their inspections done. Now, if you remember back at the form we looked at called the PCR, if, for example, it said that the water system wouldn't hold air pressure, there's a good chance they're not going to let you turn the water on. Or let's say the water heater is missing, there's a good chance they won't let you turn the water on. Anything that might have been an defective or a hazard, let's say the electrical system was gone, you won't be able to turn the power on. So your buyer will need to be aware that he's inspecting without these utilities available. A good inspector, a lot of times, will be able to tell him, look, you can see the evidence based on the photos that the pipes have been leaking, the sewer's been leaking, things like that. The other thing that you'll want to do is ask your escrow officer to order your title report as soon as possible. And what's happening is we're having more and more cases come up where these properties have HERO and PACE and other types of loans. The property I just mentioned in Downey a few minutes ago, that is now falling out again. 5 days into the contract, we found out that in addition to the normal property taxes, there is an annual bill added for $8,450 a year. What does that mean? That means the buyer not only was paying $600,000 for the property, he is paying an additional $140-something thousand to pay off that HERO loan. Okay, HUD does not pay these off. They don't clear title, so you got to make sure that that is not there, because there is no workaround. If the buyer closes escrow with that in place, he's on the hook for that money. Let's see if there's anything else here. Okay, so again, you'll have your utilities turned on. A good idea is to also get your appraisal done on that point. The appraiser, if he's got utilities, it's better for him because then he doesn't have to come out and do a re-inspect. If they have to do work, if the appraiser comes in and finds that the items that HUD called out on their property repairs, if he doesn't call these items out, you'll be able to get those removed. On the reverse of that, if he goes out and finds more items that he considers to be minimum property requirements, those will have to be added to the MPR list. And then that amount will be factored in when you get the loan or the add-on to the loan. Again, now, if it's up to $10,000 maximum and there's only 8 spent, the $2,000 goes back to pay off the loan. It doesn't go into the buyer's pocket. And again, stress to the buyer, this is not a gift. It is a actual money that they borrowed and have to pay back. In some cases, you'll find a property that doesn't need anything. Now, personally, I meet my appraisers there. I carry smoke detectors, I carry carbon monoxide detectors and double-sided tape. Common sense, stick them up so the appraiser can see them and test them. When he leaves, you take them with you. Why do you take them? Because if you don't, they'll be gone next time you go out there. And then give them to your buyer at close of escrow. After the initial period of having your inspections, having all that done, the escrow is pretty much as normal. Your loan is going to process the same way. The escrow officer, if they worked with HUD, they'll be accustomed to the fact that HUD doesn't sign any of their usual documents, and they don't sign anything until 5 days prior to close of escrow. Again, we'll go back and you'll look at the dates. Owner occupants, 45 days for an owner occupant, 30 days for an investor, whether it's cash or hard money, they don't care. They still give them 30 days. Any period beyond that, you may get the first extension free, especially if it's a lender problem or a seller problem. After that, then you're going to be looking at $375 for every extension. So those are about the only things that I have to cover on that right now.
Cell phone app.
I already did that first thing right up here, Android and iPhone.
Yeah.
And you can take a look at those. And again, they have not set this up yet where you can submit bids on this. You do have to go to the HUD Home Store site to submit bids. So that's really the only reason your consumers can use this all the time. They can log in and find stuff. They can set it up to notify them of certain property types in certain areas, things like that. And again, it'll change. One thing that reason I can have people look at that, I say check it every day, is because the fallout rate is somewhere around still 60-65% on the first escrow. So if you're watching this closely every day, you might see something that you missed and didn't get a bid in on, and you'll see it's back on the market, and you have a chance to go in and get the bid in right away. So it's just an easy tool to get up, hit the link on your iPhone, your Android phone, and check and see what's new in the market or what's back on the market. And then if your buyer likes it, then make an offer. And HUD Home Owned is a search field also in the MLS. So you can specify that and say, give me all the HUD properties, and they'll show you if there are any that are available in the market. And again, there's not a lot. When we first started doing these classes, it wasn't unusual to see 75, 80, maybe 100 properties on the HUD Home Store site. But when the market's been booming, you typically don't see as much foreclosure. And HUD has also decided to go different routes with disposition. They really don't take as many properties back anymore. Most of them they sell at trustee sale and just go ahead and pay the servicer their claim because they don't want the property. Owning these properties right now is a major pain for HUD because it's expensive to maintain them. They have break-ins, they have squatters, they have city issues because the city governments love to go after them because, hey, it's the federal government, so deep pockets. So they want to have as few properties on the market as possible, and they want to get them sold as relatively quickly as possible as well. So I think that might have covered everything that I've got. Caroline, do you think of anything I forgot, or Mike, anything I forgot?
I think you're good.
Okay.
Any other questions out there?
If there are, you can either unmute yourself or go down to the chat.
Yeah, you know, David, there's a question that Mike answered to me privately, if you can answer that one. It was what's the title rate that you mentioned to ask
It's
for
the-
to save clients a
ask-
few $100s?
Okay, ask your title rep to give you the REO rate. And what that's going to do, it's going to give an REO rate to the seller, which is a few $100s less than what would normally be paid. You typically don't see a lot of difference on the policy that goes to the lender, but at least if you're saving some money, maybe $300 or $400 or $500 on the seller side, on a transaction for most buyers today, you know, $500 is quite a bit of money. That might be money they could use to buy a home warranty, something like that, that would benefit them, you know, on the property. Again, HUD does not provide home warranties. That's something that I know certain agents give those to the buyers just to have peace of mind for a year afterwards. Again, on the credit, when you're reducing the commissions, keep in mind that's not money that goes back to the buyer, that goes back to HUD. If you are a part of a brokerage that your marketing plan is built around giving money back to the buyers to have them work with you, I don't know how that really works. I believe that's a side agreement between your brokerage firm and the buyer, because escrow would not be allowed to cut that check back to the buyer. Some of the escrows now are allowing commission dispersal authorization, CDAs. That really goes from company to company. In most cases, the commission is going to be paid directly to the broker. It'll be up to the broker to do the disbursements in-house. Although we are seeing sometimes now that, like, I get paid on a CDA, and how they let us do that, I don't really know the backroom negotiation, but that's how it works. Yet again, overall, it's not a bad process. It's a little bit scary if you haven't done it, but once you've done one or two of them, you'll find out it's a very, very easy way to do business. And again, the key things are always look at your values. These properties, even though we do a BPO and they do an automatic valuation process, 99.9% of the time, these are the prices that were put out by the HUD appraiser that went out, an FHA appraiser who actually walked the property. And the numbers can change. The numbers can change from day to day, but we are seeing a trend towards lenders asking for more conservative numbers from their appraisal networks. So like I said, I've had probably more appraisal fallout in the last 3 or 4 months than I have in the last 3 or 4 years, just because of valuation issues. Again, the COVID situation is causing some problems where the buyer could lose their job, especially now that lenders are doing a final employment verification even after they've signed the docs. And that's a real possibility that your buyer needs to be aware of, that these things can go on. But otherwise, it's a fairly simple process. It's not something to be, you know, afraid of. It's not a be-all, do-all. And from a marketing standpoint, it's just one more thing to have to be able to show your buyers as it comes on the market. And I think that's all I got, unless we've got more questions. Doggone it. I had a PayPal link where you could send me money, but it disappeared.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate your being here.